Hey y'all, Patrick James, Cold Dead Hands, Black Coffee Perspectives, and my sidekick,
Jon, Double Tap Britain, Midnight Munchies, Food for Thought, Cold Dead Hands, and Into the Fray.
Into the fray, and we're going to venture into this fray.
Today you might say we're going to take on some sacred cows.
Yeah, we've been talking about slaughtering some sacred cows. So, Jon, tell us all about Father Christmas.
Father Xmas?
Xmas.
Yeah, we had a post, and it was actually a gun post, talking about what I want for Christmas. Guns.
Yeah.
A whole lot of guns. And what everybody keyed on, well, not everybody, but what a lot of people keyed on was the fact that Christmas in the meme was abbreviated XMAS.
How dare you take the Christ out of Christmas?
And thus the war on Christmas, the Christmas culture war, is on like Donkey Kong.
So it's time to slay some sacred cows.
There's one of the things that I pointed out in a follow-up post, because the first person who called me out on it did so respectfully. He was just like, why did you choose to use the Xmas instead of Christmas? Mm-hmm. And not trying to start a fight, just curious. So I explained.
You enlightened them about the use of the X in Christmas.
One thing that we see a lot in our constitutional arguments, is people trying to apply modern definitions and interpretations to constitutional original intent.
Well, and I think that's a common thing because we learn in the modern,
mm-hmm.
we speak in the modern for the most part. Why would we translate in the foreign, in the antiquated?
Well, and
that makes a difference in the Constitution. It also makes a difference in other areas.
Like Christmas.
A
lot of people look at the Xmas abbreviation, and in our modern culture, X is like crossing something out.
Cancel culture.
You're taking Christ out of Christmas. But about 30 seconds on Google, and you find that abbreviation, Xmas, actually dates back to like 1021.
I probably actually dates back further than that.
The first recorded
of Xmas. Xmas.
Using the X in place of Christ. So that abbreviation is not some new secular left atheistic attempt to remove Christ from Christmas. It's been around for millennia.
Well, you say 1012.
1021.
All right, 1021, but doesn't it go back to like 335?
No. The representation of Christ
with an X?
With an X or X-type symbols does predate that. I'm talking about strictly
just the X?
The abbreviation for Christmas as Xmas dates back to 1021.
Right.
Now,
prior to that...
Hold on, before you get into that.
Oh, okay.
Christmas itself is an abbreviation for Christ's Mass. So people are okay with that abbreviation,
mm-hmm.
but not okay with the Xmas abbreviation, which has been around for 1,000 years.
Right.
Because it's somehow in our modern era.
Well, it's error too.
A modern error. It somehow now, like one guy pointed out in a comment, so X-mission, short for transmission, which is a stupid abbreviation on its face, but he equated that with Christmas. Anytime you put an X, you're Xing out something. That's about as shallow.
That's about as pogue as you get. Sorry, but it is. Okay?
That's what happens.
You were cleaning the latrines and you X'd that out. Sorry, you can't X it out, man.
That's applying modern interpretations of things, modern usage of things to things that are centuries, millennia old.
Yeah.
But the real problem is a lot of Christians themselves don't know the history of it.
No, they don't.
You know, they don't know that Xmas dates back 1,000 years. They don't know. Well, a lot do know. For example, the Cairo, something you were about to allude to.
The Cairo. Yes, I have the Cairo. I also have the cross.
See,
But I have a Cairo.
and the Cairo does date back to
330 something.
right under Emperor Constantine. Constantine the First.
Yep.
And
And he used it as a charger.
yeah,
He certainly did.
and it's simply the X and P
Yep.
from the Greek alphabet, which are the first two letters in the word Christ in Greek.
Right.
So, and it actually came to him in a vision.
But to be the true Cairo, you have to add the Alpha and the Omega to it.
Oh, that was actually added later.
It was.
by Saint Ambrose.
But that's the reference that ties the Cairo all together, the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end.
Mm-hmm.
That's what ties that together for me and why it represents. I have this because it is an absolute beginning conversation for a lot of people because they ask me what that is. And I love it when people come up and say, dude, I love your Cairo. And it's like,
Dude, I love the fact that you know what a Cairo is.
absolutely. Which now we can go on with Christmas, and we will. But now again, this is where we talk about symbols.
You get into the broader topic of Christian symbols, religious symbols, symbolism in general.
Paganism.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who like to try to tie Christmas to paganism. It was all stolen from the pagans.
It was stolen from the pagans. You know what was stolen from the pagans? The lies that the pagans were actually betraying. And I think the biggest thing I take from that is that the teachings of Paul is what really brought on a hostile conversion. And I say that because did Christianity have any kind of right to convert people hostily?
No.
Christ didn't do that. Paul never taught that. But what pissed off the pagan leaders in the cities that Paul went to was Paul's peaceful conversion of their followers. And it ticked off the leaders in those pagan beliefs.
And a lot of people...
There are a lot of them, by the way.
A lot of people like to say now that, especially the Catholic Church,
Convert.
Christianized all of these pagan traditions like Yule for Christmas and things like that in order to facilitate converting pagans to Christianity. Mm-hmm. But like Pat just said, Paul was converting pagans in disturbing numbers to the pagan leaders simply by teaching the words of Christ.
The teachings of Christ were better than the teachings of the pagan leaders.
Now, when those pagan converts did come over to Christianity, yes, they did bring some of their pagan traditions with them, and a lot of them began the Christianization of those rituals themselves. It wasn't the church. The church saw the benefit of it in helping to convert more, and
well, and this is where symbology comes in, okay? Symbology and civilization is our way of unspoken word. I have a Cairo. That represents that I'm a believer in Christ. That's his name. Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end to me. This, when somebody sees it, they can say, oh, you're a Christian. Now, you may know or may not know what it is, but if you know what the Cairo is, then we may have commonality already.
And just before you go on, that practice in and of itself dates back to the earliest days of Christianity, when Christianity was literally outlawed in many places.
It goes back to the hieroglyphs on cave dwellings, the petroglyphs, the pictures. It goes back to all kinds of Eastern Eastern religions, paganism. It is all the way to modern Western culture. Symbols have been a way for us to create visual cues of association. This awesome cup has symbols all over it. And if you see these tattoos on people, most of the time you think they're probably a drunken sailor, an old crusty Marine, especially when they're just in India ink or faded so bad that you don't even know what they are, but you can look at them and say, jailhouse tat? Military tat. I don't know. But, you know, if you were a Marine, you probably did some time somewhere in somebody's jail cell. Likely, anyways.
A drunk tank, at least.
At least a drunk tank, so you might have got some India ink in the pen, I don't know. But the reality is, it is an association. If you see a bulldog with USMC, that's a symbol, and you know he's a fellow Marine. Like an anchor, you assume he's probably a squab. Swabby. Not squab, that would be a pigeon.
Yeah.
Swabby. So, I mean, those are things that you see and you associate. It's like the 1%ers. Drive down the road on your motorcycle, if you're flying colors and a rocker on your back panel, if somebody else sees you from that 1%er organization, you know you might have a common bond with that brother.
A kindred spirit.
It's a kindred spirit. It might be a safe spot. 3%ers. Oh my gosh, if you see the 3%er symbol, you might think you have something in common with them. There are a lot of people who are afraid of those symbols. But it doesn't make a difference because they are symbols of association, which we are free to associate per our Constitution and natural rights.
But that hasn't always been the case for all people.
No.
Like I started to say a while ago, when you recognize a symbol, recognize a kindred spirit, then you know you have some commonality, some association. And one of the things that came up in our discussion of the Xmas versus Christmas was the Jesus fish.
Yep.
You know, the Xmas. And
that's got to be Germanic. It has to be. It sure sounds Germanic because
it's Greek.
Sure sounds Germanic.
But the way the Jesus fish came about was when Christianity was outlawed, they would be conversing with somebody and just kind of randomly
that arc.
Draw a little arc.
Somebody else would draw that arc.
And you got a nose of a fish at one end and a cross, X at the other to form the tail. And you knew you were speaking with a brother in Christ.
Yep. There were times when brothers in Christ had to hide.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like when Paul was out teaching the Gospels and the teachings of Christ, he was chased from many a city by many a pagan because he was converting them by the thousands, and they didn't want him in their city. So he had to run. He had to flee many times. He had to hide many times. Not because he wanted to, but because he needed to get the word out. So Christmas, however you define it, is about Christ.
Yeah.
It's the way it is.
Whether it's spelled out in 2 words, Christ's Mass, 1 word, Christmas, or symbolically, Xmas.
Happy holidays.
No, holidays.
Merry Christmas.
That's so secular, but yet holidays is just a scrunched down version of holy days.
Holy day. Holiday.
You know, one thing I pointed out to somebody in our little comment thread on that whole Xmas Christmas debate was there's a whole other way you can look at it. A lot of Christians take offense to the Xmas abbreviation or the Happy Holidays greeting. Mm-hmm. But if you know, for example, the history of the X and the Xmas and the Christian symbology that it entails, and you know that holidays is just a shortened form of holy day, then every secular leftist atheist who tries to remove Christ by putting an X there or tries to remove the holiness of the holiday by saying holiday instead of holy day, they're actually reaffirming your beliefs.
Yeah.
Because you know what those things mean, what they stand for. So when those who oppose your view use them thinking that they're removing your Christ, they're actually only reaffirming your Christ and his holiness.
And so you're really only arguing amongst fellow believers because they don't give a rip about you. It's kind of like 9mm versus 45 ACP. Oh my God, Glock versus 1911. Oh my God, you've got a 1911, you're an idiot because the Glock is better. AK versus AR. Hey, it's a gun. If it goes bang when you pull the trigger, that's cool. If you like a boat anchor for a gun, carry it. If you like a piece of plastic, Tupperware, carry it. Why are you fighting amongst fellow believers in the Second Amendment and the natural rights as they were bestowed upon us?
Or fighting with fellow Christians over how the word is spelled.
Exactly.
And most of those disagreements and most of those taking offense are just simply lack of knowledge.
Yeah, and I mean, this was a good question that was posed. Should we as Christians wear symbols of our faith? Should we? I mean, I've got them. I've got them tatted. I wear symbols on my shirts. I don't think it's about wearing the symbol. I do think that if you're advertising the symbol, then you better be careful of how you act in public because you're going to be held to a standard. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you're just going to look like a hypocrite. Hey, now, that doesn't mean that we're perfect and we're not going to do stupid things because we do stupid things. We all come short and fall short of the salvation and glory of our Christ. But you need to be careful if you're going to wear those symbols. Now, you know,
the difference between wearing a symbol and this is where you start to get into trouble. When you go from wearing to identify as to worshiping.
Worshiping, and that's exactly what Paul said in Corinthians. Therefore, my friends, flee from idolatry. So if you're worshiping the symbols that you're wearing, if you're worshiping the symbols like Xmas or Christmas or the Cairo or the cross, if you're worshiping those things and not what those things represent,
you're getting into golden calf territory.
You're getting into golden calf territory. And yes, the old laws, although we are not under those old Mosaic laws, there are some believers who follow those laws. There are a lot of things that overlap into the New Testament and what Christ talked about, as Paul taught us about what Christ talked about. So be careful about your symbols. Mm-hmm. Be careful what you do with your symbols. Be careful when you're wearing them in public.
And how you're representing.
And how you represent yourself from behind a computer screen, because we know that after 9-10 years of doing this, there is every type of keyboard commando, behind the screen warrior who wouldn't say 2 words to your face if they were standing in front of you. But they'll say anything and everything they want from behind the screen.
From supposed anonymity.
Yep. Supposed anonymity. Anyways, symbols. Should we wear them? Should we respect them? Should we argue about them?
Should we know them and know what they mean?
Happy holidays. Merry Christmas. Merry Xmas. This is about symbols. It's about believers. It's about Christianity, a paganism. It was about all of that. But the reality is, it's about what it represents, and that's the Christ and his values. Thanks for tuning in for this video.
Peace.
Through superior firepower.